Order. I'll ask Commissioner Harden if you'll lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for this day that you've given us. Thank you, Lord, for all the many ways that you've blessed us. Thank you, Lord, for blessing our county. And I just thank you, Lord, for the leadership here represented. And ask, Lord, for your guidance as we go throughout the meeting. And we ask these things in your name.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. If you'd like to speak tonight, you'll have two opportunities to speak, citizens to be heard, one at the beginning, one at the end. You can do either or. You can also speak on each individual item. I ask you to please fill out a speaker card before you speak.
And Dr. Kessler's standing up because his back hurts, not for any other reason.
Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you. It's not technically my back, but it'll do.
Okay.
Close enough, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I play one at the board meetings.
All right. I got you.
All right. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Do we have any changes?
Make a motion.
Yep,
We
yep,
approve.
Yep. And I am looking for...
Consent, Howard?
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm going to pull item number 4 on the consent agenda. And I understand we have canceled the awards and presentation item.
Right.
Tabled,
Table, yes.
Okay, so so when you're pulling that, I'm also would like to pull item 6, and that allows citizens to speak on either one of those two.
Okay.
That's correct?
So we're pulling 4 and 6 from consent for discussion. Any other changes? Motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
First and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Wait.
Oh.
On awards and presentations, I have several
Okay.
items. Do you want them listed, or do you want me to just say
You'll be the
several
only
items?
one on it, so we'll just turn that over to you when you get
Okay.
to that point.
Very good.
Any other changes? Now we'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Start out with citizens to be heard. Miss Melanie Perez.
Thank you.
This is a pretty desperate situation, and I'm asking for your help for. I and my family, about half of our land is in Wakulla County. I personally live in Wakulla County. However, the access to my home is through Leon County. They are fixing to, on March the 9th, destroy and replace the natural bridge, which is how I come to and fro my home. Okay? The problem with that is, right now I am 8 miles from a fire department and from health, EMS, etc., from my church, my family, my life, within that 8 miles. This detour is going to be 28 miles one way. It's not bad enough that it's just 28 miles, which that's the equivalent of going to Tallahassee to the other side of Monticello and back every day just to get home. It's the fact that this is a very dangerous road. The first 6 miles of it is the newly paved road that goes from Natural Bridge to Fanlou that goes into Jefferson County. Okay? A very curvy, unmarked, dark, desolate road with no one. Okay? Someone runs off the road, which it'll be one of my family members, because there's nobody behind us. We're the only ones coming and going from that distance. You run off the road, you hit a deer, you hit a tree, that's it. There's not going to be anybody behind you to call 911. Cell service is iffy in those areas. From there, you go to 59 or Tram Road. And as y'all know, neither one of those roads are great either, okay? The problem is, for 4 years, I've been getting nothing but a runaround from Leon County and from the DOT about this, of why they did not plan from the beginning an on-site bypass. Everybody is quickly to shift blame to somebody else. My very first conversation with the very first official 4 years ago, they said, "Ma'am, we didn't realize you were there." They thought we had a road going south to Wakulla County. Did not include us in their planning. Nobody wants to admit that now, but that's obvious what's happened. Because everybody is just at wits about, wow, can't believe that. But there's nobody to say, hey, stop this. I don't think anybody wants to take responsibility to stop the project at this point. I am trying to get an appointment with the governor. I think I'm real close to that. I've been told that they're the only ones that can actually stop the project right now. I have no problems with them replacing the bridge, but they need to do an on-site bypass of some type. Now, there are approximately 100 other citizens affected from Fanaloo that are also very upset because they too have a long detour and they live, but they're in Jefferson County. That's why I'm here. I'm representing about 20 members of my family. There are 3 homes on this property who will have no fire coverage. We will have no EMS service. We all run cattle over there. We have pine forest. I mean, we live over there. We live and work over there every day. We come and go just like everybody else does. I have a business. My brother who lives next to me has a business. We come and go all day long. We're looking at over $2,000 a month in extra costs just from my household. And I just want to know what normal person can afford that, added to their budget. All I'm asking from you as my immediate representatives is to please go to Leon County, send them a letter or something saying, listen guys, y'all doing something wrong here. We are looking at suing the day that they close the bridge.
Can we wrap it up, Ms. Gerald?
Excuse me?
Can we
Yeah.
wrap it up?
I just need your help.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just so you know the process, during this portion, we can't really engage or answer that, but at discussion, we can do that at the end and see if there's anything we can do. At least stand with you. Thank you. All right, that's our only citizens to be heard. We'll go into awards and presentations. Howard, we'll turn that over to you.
Thank you. So my first announcement is on Tuesday, February 10th, I believe that's a week from tomorrow, at the All Saints Cinema, the movie Groundswell Rising, featuring Craig Stevens, will be shown. And this movie, is sponsored by Physicians for Social Responsibility and Rethink Energy Florida. There is no admission fee. Donations would be accepted. It's a very small theater. The film deals with fracking. And the Physicians for Social Responsibility have been loud and clear where they stand on this issue. This is an issue that spans all political spectrums, from what people consider extreme right, Tea Party property rights, to extreme liberalism. There is a segment in each one of the political spheres that is very concerned and opposed to the present fracking and potentially how it would continue, because it's already started to a small extent in Florida. So that's a free movie, February 10th, All Saints Cinema. That's the cinema theater. That's where the old Amtrak depot is. So small theater though, so if you want to see it, you should get there a little early. There's a couple of birthdays I'd like to mention in the month of February, especially Thomas Paine. And Thomas Paine was a person that we all learned a little about in high school, but he was a strong voice for fairness in the United States, and he was a strong voice for the separation from England. He was, in essence, one of our strongest voices for revolution. And depending on which calendar you use, because there was a calendar shift back then, but February 2nd, today, is Thomas Paine's birthday, according to one of those calendars, and just wanted to recognize him. Also, another birthday boy, which is February 12th. I believe that's Charles Darwin. He's been mentioned a few times, and that's okay. And we'll mention him again. The other announcement I'd like to make is we had a town hall meeting on January 27th. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing of the town hall meeting, but if anyone wants sort of a recap of I think what I'll do is I'll offer it to the county to put up on their website. But it dealt with, and if you don't get it that way, just contact me and I'll be happy to email you the summary, which I want to mention I got a lot of help from staff, especially our county administrator. And there were a lot of times where I was able to say, don't know the answer to that question, but I will find out. And how I found out was going to staff, and appreciate that support. The meeting dealt with, as always, one of the first things out of the box was road conditions. I'm not going to go into any of the specifics or what the answers were, but planning and sprawl, impact fees, the environment, grave sites, especially the grave sites that are small, family-owned, or difficulty in getting to, and questions concerning the ability of a family to get to a grave site when they have to pass through other person's properties. Waste Pro, and I will say that Waste Pro called me back about an hour ago, responding to what I and the administration had passed on to them. Community health, there's a breakfast meeting going to be taking place on February 16th dealing with community health in our county. The widening of 319, the beginning of the process of purchase of right-of-way. There were a lot of questions on that and concerns about, how many people have been through this process. Probably almost zero. So it's something new. They're concerned, and the idea is to try to get some more information for them. And the first place to start is that February 19th meeting that FDOT is holding, and that meeting is going to be held at the community center. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could, Howard, add something to that real
Sure,
quick.
please.
Right now, when citizens come in there, I've talked to at least two, that there are no maps to show what the DOT is going to purchase, but David has been provided those maps. Brent, I guess, was giving them DOT, he gave them to me, I gave them to David. He's going to print out a couple sets so people can actually have something to look at and see what the DOT is proposing to buy.
We're actually, I was just emailing Jess on this in our office. We're going to have copies printed at the office so somebody can go up there and look, as well as all the other DOT information.
Right now, the other DOT information is studies, but it doesn't really tell you anything. So that'll be a big help.
At our front desk, we should have just about everything, as well as a contact person with DOT that they can call about their individual parcel.
Good.
Thank you, Commissioner Merritt. Stormwater study and management was another area. Bidding for contracts. There was one question on the vetting of county commissioners. That means knowing their backgrounds before they run for election or get elected. That was an interesting question. Volunteer firefighter training, and a bill that's moving through the Senate, I believe. Amendment 1, funds and how those funds are going to be used. Recreation, specifically there was concern that there were, I'll mention this one because it was a new area for me, and one that I'm still fleshing out, of why some of our citizens are having to set up not-for-profit corporations in order to have some of these activities move forward. So there were there were a bunch of people there. There was well over 50 people, possibly moving on to 60. The room was pretty full. There were really good questions. I want to just mention for the county that it was a totally civil meeting with all the different points of view that were expressed. It was just a very, very pleasant meeting where people were really seeking information, and hopefully we're providing it to them. So I'll be continuing with these hopefully throughout the county. The first one was held in these commission chambers, but that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Move approval of consent.
As modified.
And that is with 4 and 6 pulled.
I got no.
Have a second on that?
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Item number 4, I'm pulling. It's a request board approval to award ship purchase assistance to Amber Annan for down payment and closing costs on an existing single-family home. I have a conflict of interest. The company I work for is providing the primary mortgage, so I will not be voting on that item.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Number 6, Howard, we'll turn that one over to you.
I think you
Right.
just wanted, in case somebody wanted to talk about it, or did you want to talk about it?
Well, let's see where this goes. I want to first locate it where it is in my notes, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So the reason I'm pulling this is that the members of the Code Enforcement Board are appointed by a vote of the Board of County Commissioners. And so I look at it upon as our responsibility that when things may be going amiss, that we step forward. And I just want to take the privilege of questioning the board, which I want to lay the predicate for it, that there was one member, Mr. Danzy, who came to the chambers for the Code Enforcement Board meeting and had been drinking, according to report, and had acted in a way that was certainly, by report, inappropriate, and I'll address that under discussion time with the commission. But I just want to point out that it's a pretty serious thing that we do when we appoint people to these boards, and that's the purpose that I pulled this out, so that when I speak to it at the end of the meeting, it's in reference to our votes on these. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we'll move into general business. Item number 8.
Yes, this is request board approval of change order number 3 to Godfrey Builders LLC for additional work at fire station number 8 and the water line extension purpose. This is a extension of a water line to the fire station for the purpose, and also the change order is primarily for addition of a sprinkler system that was not first envisioned when we started the project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Any citizens? All right,
Yeah.
discussion?
Can you just go through that? I think all the board members understand it, but it is a sizable amount of additional money. I believe it's $55,000, so it's not just a small...
Well, it's actually by the time we did everything else, it's about a $39,000 increase.
Okay.
It still comes in underneath the budgeted amount that we had promised you guys for the project. It's just that we were about $39,000 under what we thought we were going to be, but this ate up the rest of that. And what it's for is for a commercial sprinkler system, and we were first going to
Fire sprinkler system,
fire
not for
sprinkler
grass.
system. Yeah, that's right. Fire. And due to the fact that we had been told that a residential system would work, come to find out once we went to the fire marshal, etc., that due to us having the fire trucks parked in the majority of the time, we have to take into account of those burning. So therefore, that kicked us into this bigger system, and we could have went with the residential, but then if something happened, our insurance company wouldn't cover us. So we have to go, as well as this is a safe thing, we don't have to worry about it anymore, and it's over. And this would cover it if one of our trucks caught on fire, it would douse the trucks.
Standard stuff for commercial construction.
Right.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next, we'll move into our planning and zoning.
But we gotta, have to
Gotta
wait
wait till
6 for
6.
that.
Oh, wow, we're ahead of the game, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Alex has not showed up. Okay. Karaoke time, anyone?
Commissioner Merritt, we can go and skip the
Yeah, we
Commissioner
just
Merritt's item. We can go ahead and finish the rest of the agenda, and then we'll pick up planning and zoning at 6 if we're done by then.
Okay.
Is the item 11 a public hearing also? The text amendment?
It's not quasi-judicial.
We can go ahead and do that.
You want to go ahead and do that one, Ralph? Item 11?
Mr. Quintana, is that Mr. Quintana just showed
That's
up? I'd like to introduce Alex Quintana, who is the field representative for Gwen Graham's office. We have a little time. If you'd like to speak to us, I'd invite you to come on up and tell us what's going on.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you all for having me here today. We'll be coming at least once a month on behalf of the Congresswoman from her office over in Panama City to hold office hours here in the county, and then also to report back to her what's going on with y'all.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming down.
Absolutely.
All right. Now we'll go to item number 12.
She said we could do 11.
Let's hit 11.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a request for a comprehensive plan amendment to transmit a change to the public school facilities element. This is really a minor change, just amending a date in that element.
I'll move option 1 without having to read the whole thing. It's like 20 words long. Is that good enough, Heather?
Yeah.
Do we have
Or
a
just
second?
approval?
Second.
Any discussion?
So this is exactly the same agreement that we've signed on to in the past, except for that date change?
It is, the school board updates their facilities plan every year, and we just amend the comp plan to reflect that new updated plan.
Sure. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Now we'll do commissioner items. Number 12, Commissioner Merritt.
Mine is actually 2 text changes to the comp plan. Number 1 is back in 2010, on the last year, which is an evaluation and appraisal report, there was a section added into the code, or the comp plan, and it created a Wakulla Springs Special Planning Area and referenced the Primary Springs Protection Zone. And in that, it basically said you can't have any increases in density in the comp plan in this area, period. Which means if that had been in effect today, there'd be no Walmart, no Flower subdivision, no Lindsay Mill subdivision, no Beef O'Brady's. Most people don't realize where that zone is. It's right there at Bellamy's, north, basically, and it follows 61 roughly over to Wakulla Station, north. So, but rather than just delete it all together, I talked to Louis and come up with basically kind of a compromise, I guess, because the spirit is to protect the springs. So I want to change it to no net increase in dwelling units beyond that allowed future land use rural 2, as allowed in the future land use map on the policy shall be allowed inside the Primary Springs Protection Zone unless the area to be changed is intended to be served by central sewer. The other one is currently, and this has irked me for years, but currently the comp plan doesn't allow commercial zoning, right, Heather, unless you're within a quarter of a mile of an arterial road and a collector road, which means we're basically restricting ourselves to commercial on 319 or on Woodville Highway. And I had envisioned that growth would go out from the county, not just restricted north and south. So my motion is going to be to direct staff to prepare those 2 comp plan text amendments as outlined in my agenda item.
I second your motion.
Okay.
We have a first and second, and just to be clear that we're not making any changes tonight for the benefit of the public. We're just, if this passes, direct staff to bring that back, and at that point,
Correct.
that will be considered.
Correct.
We have a first and a second. We'll ask the citizens to come up. We'll start with Ms. Madeline Carr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Madeline Carr, 223 Iroquois Road in Crawfordville. I'm here representing as a member of the Wakulla Springs Alliance and also as the president of Friends of Wakulla Springs State Park. Previous commissioners had the foresight to create the first spring protection zone, which you referenced earlier, in Florida, and upon learning from additional scientific research, the commission expanded the zone to include the entire Wakulla Spring Basin in 2008. The zone is only 14% of the county, and half of the zone is in public land. Leon County has followed Wakulla County's lead and established a Wakulla Spring Protection Zone that comprises 23% of Leon County. The following comments I'd like to make. Number one, can you assure the community that your request to staff will include how to assess and mitigate future risks to this ecological system, to human health, and the quality of life? Two, initiating a land use change requires professional and citizen input. What exactly are you trying to improve with such a request from staff, and how did the board make that determination? Number three, how does the board go about selecting or determining a land use change need? Four, what is the community citizens' vision? Based on your idea that the locally created and locally sensitive wetlands ordinance could not be handled by staff because no expertise existed and was therefore repealed, can you explain how you intend to make the community more aware and comfortable of how you arrive at the decision to change the comprehensive plan? 5. Will your staff be directed to work with professional economists, hydrogeologists, and biologists to determine the effect of your request on staff as it attempts to write changes affecting this large watershed? 6. What does staff, or your model if such exists, do to address sprawl into this natural habitat and will become a housing development and/or strip mall? Your request to change the current comp plan should include discussions about transportation. Right now, everyone needs to ride a car. It seems, in effect, that you're asking for a land use change that outpaces the population requirements. 7. Will you ask staff to include provisions that future developments pay for themselves? 8. How will this make the highway to the beach, 319, more attractive? Will it enhance Wakulla County? 9. Will your planning staff or other professionals be able to predict how your request will affect floodplains and natural habitats? 10. What studies do you have how your request will change water and air quality and quantity? 11. Are you anticipating other land use changes that will be encouraged by this request? And finally, 12. Would your board be averse to a public discussion about the need for a springs protection zone? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Next, Chris Russell.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Russell, 92 Pimlico Drive here in Crawfordville. If you go this route, I think we need to be very clear about requiring developers to put in sewage lines and residents to hook up. And the reason I bring that up is looking at the agenda items, looking at the full agenda item, it says something to the effect of intended, and Louis, you may be able to better clarify that, but intended sewage service. It needs to be concrete. They need to definitely be required to do it. There needs to be a plan set up for going in on this where there's no opportunity for a developer to back out. The homes also obviously would need to be hooked up as well. This could offer a possibility to get some others off septic, So I know you can't have dialogue here, but if that is an option for the others along that line to come off septic and go in there, I think that's a great idea to have them come off a septic, but we should have some type of incentive. My incentive will be the environmental benefit. That won't work with some folks when it comes to the bottom line, their dollar. So we need to be looking at that. Hopefully we have some best management practices that we can have going in there as well. So definitely be clear on it when you come, when you're writing up staff, that it is concrete, that there is no way for them to back out of this. All right? Thank you very much for your time.
Next, we'll have Miss Raven Fierce.
Raven Fierce, 54 Raven Road, and the lady in the purple pretty much covered everything, so I'm just going to move straight with my questions. My biggest question is why? I passed 15 signs all the way down, seeing commercial property. What are we trying to develop? This plan was put into place to protect. Now you're going to open the floodgate. I mean, who wants to come in? What are we really getting at? Who has shown interest? How many units? Are we going to do residential and commercial? Like the gentleman here said, you know, people connecting to sewer, you know, you're kind of opening up. If you're just saying this rural too, then depending on what type of dwelling, they could just put in a septic tank. You know, how is that going to affect it? Also, a lot of people don't know that the way that water flows down there, it pools and then it goes back up north. That is also the water that primarily affects the color of the water in the river in Wakulla Springs. So just a little heads up to keep that in mind when you're developing that area.
Thank you. That is our last citizen. Discussion amongst commissioners.
Just to be clear, this is a text change in the comp plan, not a land use change. We still have the future land use map that governs density and all that stuff. This just says it's possible to do it if you're going to be on sewer. I agree with what Chris said. Louis, you understand the intent. You know, even if the lines aren't there, if they're going to be served by sewer in the future, that was my intent. But if we want to make it more concrete, that's perfectly fine with me. Again, it doesn't guarantee anybody anything. This was put in 2010, and just all of a sudden it said you can't do anything. No increases. So, anyway. I'm gonna beat it to
Someone
death.
needs to rezone or desires to rezone, that would have to come back as a complete separate application.
This
under
is
the
a,
process.
this is a, well, even further than that, if somebody wanted to do a future land use change, they'd have to come to the board, then they'd have to apply for a rezoning.
Mhm.
This just allows, if you're going to be on sewer, you can at least apply for a comp plan amendment. But it doesn't mean you're going to
Still
get
have to meet all the other
Absolutely.
provisions that are in place.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This just means you can apply.
Very good. Further discussion?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing that I'm concerned about is that sewer does not assure the prevention of additional pollution. As a matter of fact, sewer can lead to additional pollution. So why do I say that? It's the same thing I said when we were looking at the performance-based septic tanks. If you have a situation where you have one performance septic tank, or one standard, let's start with one standard septic tank on 1 acre of land, and it produces whatever the level of nitrogen it's going to produce and throw into our ground. And then you go and you say, well, let's do this performance-based, but now that we're doing performance-based, let's allow 8 to the acre. By the time you do the math, you haven't helped anyone. In that case, you hurt people. You hurt our water. Because if you take all those, let's pretend 2 times 8 is 16, and these aren't exact figures, but I'm just doing it as an example. So now we have 16 milligrams going in versus the 10. Okay. There's another really serious thing to consider when we're dealing with sewer. And that is, when you want to go and try to get some subdivision off of sewer, and it's located here, and your last bit of sewer is here, and you run that pipe, now you've opened the door for all of that new area to be on sewer. And that's good if you're a developer and all you want to think about is more development. But if you're a developer who not only wants to think about more development, but wants to think about, I'd like those glass-bottom boats at Wakulla Springs to run more than a few times a year, then it's not such a good idea, and there are other planning options. So that's one whole thing with sewer. And it just gets to the opening the door for more density. I would ask the commissioners individually to just reflect on yourself. Do you understand why the quarter mile, within a quarter mile to the intersection, was even put in our comp plan? Why it was put in? What are the pros, what are the cons of having that language there? And if you don't, now's not the time to push ahead. And the last thing I'd mention is impact fees. We hear that our economy is starting to change. We're now starting to put in place things that would allow more growth and more density. And before we do that, not as we're doing it, not after we do this, but before we do this, we need to go back and handle the old business of impact fees. Thank you.
I want to explain a little further on that, the intersection thing. The text I proposed was to change it from an intersection of an arterial and a collector to the minimum of an intersection between a major collector and a minor collector. In other words, the way it is now, if Michelle's Grocery wanted to be there, or Max Meats, or you know where the Fix-It place is there in Shadeville area, they couldn't do that today. But that is an intersection of a major collector and a minor collector. So this would allow uses like that, neighborhood commercial that's already there.
Further discussion? Good, Jerry?
I'm fine.
Oh, you look like you wanted to say something. All right, we've got a first and a second. We'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. I guess next we'll go to County Attorney,
Nothing to say.
County Administrator.
Yes.
County Administrator, can you fill 20 minutes?
I wanted to ask one,
I can talk slow.
We can go ahead and do discussion though, right?
well, we could go back and discuss Ms. Perez's
Yeah.
thing that we got brought up earlier.
That's right.
And we can,
If it would be
we can do
okay
our
with the
final
committee.
citizens to be heard also.
Yeah, we got final two.
I was just teasing.
Real quick, don't forget Tuesday the 17th at 3 p.m. is our Fire MSBU and Public Safety Issue Workshop. So that our meeting's on that Tuesday because we're off that Monday, the previous Monday. Guy Strickland Road, you guys had asked us for a plan. We're looking at that currently. We went and looked at it, and we're preparing some cost estimates for us to consider and how to move forward with repairing that road. Levy Bay Road, with the warning signs were placed on Levy Bay Road, so that's done. As well as we've placed reflectors at the end of each driveway on Walker Drive, and we're going to see how that works, and hopefully no more cars will drive off. And Shadow Oak Circle, I think, Dr. Kessler, that was one of your items. We've taken that, and as I explained to each one of you, we can handle that if and when it comes up, when someone is ready to build on that lot. Then we can take action there. Our one plan has already been turned down on that property, but at this point in time, there's nothing we can do unless someone comes in and turns the plan in and says, I want to build here and
Don't you-
Here's why and how.
Don't you have to have a no-rise certification, Louis, if you're gonna place fill in a flood zone?
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yes, you do.
That's
That
what
has
we
to be
just
done
don't
by an engineer, right?
Yes.
I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Hasn't there already been fill put into an adjoining lot that probably did just that?
I believe there may have been, but, you know, the current regulations require that we do get that certification.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, unless y'all want Heather to get up and dance or something.
Well, while we're talking about roads, I meant to call Cleve today and didn't get a chance. I got a call today, and I've had a couple calls in the past about, in bad rain conditions, hydroplaning at Woodville Highway and Commerce. And Cleve, I think we spoke about that in the past, and you guys were going to check with DOT. I understand there was another accident today. I don't know if it was related, but it was not related? Okay. Has anyone else had any other calls about that? Apparently, they said the drainage is bad in that area, and it pools up during periods of heavy rain.
State road or well, Commerce
on-
actually isn't even a county road, is it, Cleve?
Well, this is on Woodville Highway,
Okay.
but right there at the intersection.
I would-
Right, I used to drive that all the time. It is.
It's a
finding
good thing
area.
for
It's got a
CTFT.
curb, has a curb section on the outside, and it does retain some water.
Brent, let's bring that up at CTST meeting while the DOT officials are there, and we can ask them to address it.
Okay.
I'm gonna rely on you to remember.
Appreciate it. That's all you have? All righty. Let's go ahead and we've got one more citizens to be heard. Chris Russell.
So I have 17 minutes instead?
No, you do not.
Once again, Chris Russell, 92 Pimlico. Dr. Kessler mentioned earlier, he did a town hall this past week. I attended it, and I think it's a great concept. I highly recommend each of you take that opportunity. It kind of allowed some fresh discussion to come about, and I think it was a great idea. There's a lot of trash on the side of the road. One of the selling points we're going with the contract, the mandatory garbage, like me, where it cost me more money, was that we would have a reduction in trash. It doesn't happen, and we're not picking it up as much, one or the other. I don't know whose wheelhouse that belongs in, but it's quite embarrassing. I mean, there's no other way to say it. As many roads as we have that are totally trashed up right now. I don't know what we can do about it, but please try to address it. You look like you want to talk, but I know you can't, so hold tight.
I'm in
five-
listen
As
mode.
soon as you get done talking, he can.
Yeah. 5 p.m. Is a challenge for the start time. It definitely is. I'm not necessarily saying we need to get a 6. Maybe we need to hit right down the middle. I think tonight's a great example. If we started at 5:30, we'd still get out a decent time. Staff wouldn't be here too late, but it does make it challenging for those of us that have to take off some time to come in here. So I hope you would consider that. Once again, thanks for all your consideration there. And just for clarity back on the sewage thing, what I was saying was a sewage line, not any performance base. I hope that's what we're looking at is sewage lines, Louis, over there, and that we are concrete on requiring them. Not that they intend to do it in the future, but that they do it. And I appreciate, Randy, you saying that y'all will follow through on that they will be required ahead of time, maybe surety bonds or something. All right, thanks again for all your work.
Thank you.
Now, what was he just talking about?
Hmm?
Said you were going to address it.
No, I'm not. You can, though.
What was it? I forgot.
No, you mean under discussion?
Oh, the trash. Is the sheriff's department still pick up trash on county roads?
Yeah, not as much, but that's something we're going to find out. I know our trash levels on the sides of the roads had went down initially, but I'll need to get from Keep Wakulla County Beautiful what that tonnage is now, and I haven't got a report this year, so we'll get that and share that
They
and see
get
what's going on.
paid to pick up state roads, right?
That's right.
And I think they were doing it for free on the county roads. Is that right?
Yeah, and there was a problem. Anyway, they switched over to, I think, WCI. Their folks now are picking up the roads with the sheriff's deputy. So I got to find out what the
I
deal
did
is
notice
there.
I haven't seen as many prisoners out picking up trash on
Right.
county roads in
Right.
the last while. You're right. That made a big difference.
I would say on the number of phone calls that I get from citizens, the trash along the sides of the roads increasing is notably increasing. So they're responding to what they see, and what they see is apparently an increase of trash, which had originally gone down.
I think it's almost feeds on itself like exponential. If people see there's already trash there, and they say, what difference is a little bit more going to make, and chuck it out there. It's a shame.
I don't think like that. I don't think any of that.
I don't either. When I first mowed the road in front of my house, when I first built it, I blew all the trash out into the road, and buddy, that cut way back on it then. When you can actually see it.
Yeah.
You know, this is people that throwing all this trash on the side of the road. It really cut it back once you maintain the side of the road.
And it's also the issue of having the mowers that we've addressed go through both state and county before that trash pickup, and we can make a real big mess, even messier, by mowing it.
There's several roads that have been adopted by service organizations like the Lions Club and all, and they regularly maintain those short sections, but that's minute in the grand scheme of the county. And there's other road sections that have been adopted, but the people that adopted them aren't doing the cleanup.
Maybe you could adopt Smith Creek Highway.
Well, I've got 2 miles of it already.
All right, well, we'll go into discussion items. Commissioner Kessler, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll defer to handle the first one that was brought up by the citizen concerning the bridge issue.
Okay, Ms. Perez.
Anybody got any suggestions? I mean, we got to...
Well, I think at a minimum, we as a board should be writing a letter, and I think it should be a very strong letter, supporting and defending our citizen and calling attention to this matter and demanding that they do right.
If you want to make that in the form of a motion as a resolution from the board,
I will.
I'll second that. If it's got to go to DOT, though. I told Tony Parks, who's the public works director for Leon County, that's a DOT funded project. So if we're going to write a letter, I think it needs to be directed to the Department of Transportation.
I fully agree, writing a letter.
We strongly
believe we should.
You know, how do you want to say it?
Well, I'd allow the administration and county attorney to work on the strong language of that. I would also recommend copying Leon County on it.
Well,
I think we ought to address to the governor as well. She's trying to get an appointment with the governor.
The issue is
copy everyone you want to copy, and send it to the right person, and copy everyone you want to copy.
It's going to adversely affect a lot of people, and even the small little bridges that we've had repaired in Wakulla, even in the out-of-way places, single lane, they've always went and put a side bridge to service the people in those areas.
Roberts Landing Road.
There's other like Buckhorn Creek and other ones. There's, I mean, like Buckhorn Creek, there's about 12 houses in there, but even whenever they switched that bridge, they put another one in there. I think I'm strongly in favor of a letter, but would it be possible to also follow up the letter with someone that we could verbally call as well? Like you know people.
I've called
DOT, and we can send a letter.
We had a meeting with the district secretary the other day with Tommy Barfield, and we talked about it then.
Yeah.
So what do they say?
They're not going to do a bypass. Environmentally sensitive lands. I don't know if Leon County would even permit one if they did want to do one.
I think we should also involve our senator and our representative legislation as well.
Well, it won't hurt for us to ask them to consider.
How long is the span?
It's a single lane bridge right now. It's
not much longer than a vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more like a culvert, sort of like what we have at, not Bottoms Road, but
Bostic Pelt?
No, not Bostic Pelt, but the Bostic Pelt's close, but Skipper Bay.
They're replacing it with a two-lane bridge. They're replacing it with a big bridge.
Okay, what I'm saying is the argument of environmentally sensitive lands. I mean, you're sticking a few poles in the ground that are going to come out of the ground in short order. I mean, and all the rest is taking place above it.
Well, I think it would require taking a couple trees down, I believe.
That was the pushback Tony Parks told me they were getting, was pushing the trees. But anyway, I seconded your motion to send a strongly worded letter that it's going to disproportionately adversely affect our citizens out there. I think that's a good way, because she's really going to be put out.
Yes.
I think there has to be some degree of reasonableness, and this does not appear to be reasonable.
Do you want this to come back
No.
for your approval?
I wouldn't say so.
I mean, do you want to see it prior to?
Well,
You wanna let,
I think time is of the
Time-
essence.
Yeah,
I
what's the
think we need to-
timeframe
we
on
need to
this?
vote
When
to
We'll
is
do
bring
the
it
it.
hammer
back for
gonna drop?
justification.
Why don't, Howard, I'll trust you. If you want to
Right.
approve the language, it's your motion. If y'all are fine with that, I think we're on the same page.
Okay.
Howard be, for lack of a better word,
Has to go out-
environmentalist, he can word how he wants to about the trees.
Has to go out before the 9th, be happy to do it.
I'd like to see in that letter that the word demand is not put. I don't think you get anywhere but demanding. So if the word demand is in there, I wouldn't be in favor
So I would
of it.
suggest any commissioners might rough out a draft of a letter as they conceive it, send it on to the county administration so that they could have that input.
Are you intending to use the word demand?
I haven't even thought.
I don't particularly like that word either. I don't, from the
Strongly
DOT.
encourage.
Strongly encouraged.
Whatever our
Just
attorney...
make them aware that,
I think our attorney and county
okay.
administrator are reasonable people, and we'll...
I would approve that as long as the word demand's not in there.
Anyway, I second Howard's motion, so.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mine was an aye.
Okay,
I
passes
have to
5
call
to
you back in the
0.
middle of a board meeting. Right. Sorry about that. That's was the doctor.
That's all right. You need to take it?
No, we're...
I thought you were a
hopefully-
doctor. Anyway.
I am, but I don't treat myself. Hopefully we won't be too much longer after 6, so...
Very good. You want to roll into your
yeah,
other discussion
that'd be
item?
great. That'd be great. Okay, let me get set up here. What was that, Cedar?
This?
Yeah, I just wanted to see what was there. So as
Shadow.
far as I'm concerned, the issue of the shadow oak, I think we've resolved it. My understanding is that in all practicality, that's a lot that's not going to be buildable, because in all practicality, if they put fill there, the water's going to have to go someplace else. I think that's what I'm hearing. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do it. I'm not an engineer, but it would require an engineer to certify that it would not cause a rise in flooding. It appears to be a closed basin, so I'm not sure how you would do it.
You have to dig a big hole. In other words, the dirt you took
And I don't know
out.
if there's
Yeah,
room
you're going
out
to try
there
to
to
make
do
it
it.
stay on their own property, which...
Well, not necessarily. It's a no-rise certification, which means if you, your neighbors all around you all flooded, you can't do something to your lot to make it flood more. You know what I mean? You don't say you keep all the water on your property. In other words, if the tide comes in and it fills up 100 acres, you can't go in and fill an acre, because theoretically the water that you displace with your fill now goes to somebody else. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I call it a no-rise certification.
Yeah. So as an engineer, Randy, on your no-rise certification, how do you make that determination as water is coming from that national forest and approaches that lot that we're talking about in Shadow Oak, and so you have different degrees of flooding?
What I would do if it was in a closed basin, as long as you, whatever you're going to displace with fill needs to be offset with material or removed from the lot to hold additional water. It'd be a simple volume calculation. But I don't see how you could, I don't know anybody would want half their lot to be a hole. You know what I mean? If you dig this many feet deep, this many feet wide, that's X gallons of water of storage. And in an ideal world, you know, assume it's 10 feet underwater, those two numbers would offset each other. The volume from the fill would offset by the volume from the hole.
Right, so so now I'm hearing that anything is possible.
They built the pyramids by hand.
Well, yeah, it's hard to comment on a hypothetical unless we saw something. We did have a permit denied on a lot there before my time, of course. So, but you know, again, anything could be possible, and it's hard to comment on something we haven't seen yet.
I wouldn't want to mess with it just from the liability issues.
When you say mess with it, you're talking
I
about
wouldn't
trying
do
to
engineering
build on it?
work
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't even do the engineering work on it.
Right. So what I'm trying to get to is trying to get to a place where the citizens on Shadow Oak could have some possible comfort that no more fill was going to be coming in there, and how could they get that?
Well, I think they could have a level of comfort that we're not going to allow any development to go on there that's going to adversely affect flooding in the area.
And that's probably the best we can do right
I think
now.
that's probably the best
Okay.
we can
The
do.
no rise, I think, are the
I got
key
it.
words. If somebody bought a house next door and demolished that house and used that second lot as a retention pond, they could throw it to that lot. So, I mean, there's cases where it can be allowed, but they would have to be able to certify by an engineer that they're not going to cause a rise to their neighbors.
Okay, very good. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I'll go back to that first item I talked about briefly at the beginning. So on January 14th of this year, Mr. Danzy was reported to arrived at the Code Enforcement Board meeting, and reportedly, Mr. Danzy stated to Mr. Burdette, another new member of the Code Enforcement meeting, quote, "You know, take them to," and I'll leave that person's name out, "the fine one who works in administration, you know," unquote. And then he looked over to the person that wrote this letter and said, quote, "But I think she is much prettier than so-and-so," unquote. And then Mr. Danzy and Mr. Burnett stepped down from their seated positions and walked over to shake the attorney's hand. I believe that's Mr. Rosenthal. And then Mr. Danzy reached down and grabbed the right hand of this person that wrote this, and forcibly, and that person that wrote this is staff, and forcibly kissed this is as written, forcibly kissed my hand to the point I could feel his teeth. I pulled my hand back and I wiped it on my pants, and I was flabbergasted. I am totally creeped out by this individual and will not tolerate him kissing my hand or any other part of my body, personal space. This individual is supposed to represent County Code Board, and as Mr. Danzy stated earlier, he announced he had been drinking. In addition to this, again, I'm reading from the letter, in addition to last night's incident, Mr. Burdette came and went to a county office, and Mr. Burdette offered up an apology to me on behalf of Mr. Danzy. Mr. Burdette stated to me that he was shocked at Mr. Danzy's behavior last night, to the point that he had to tell his wife what happened. So my questions and concern to our board, since we are the ones voting to put people on this board, and since we are the ones that recently voted to approve 2 zero-tolerance proclamations. Is this board willing to accept this kind of assault on our county employee from an appointed person to a county board? Is this board willing to disregard its no-tolerance policy the first time someone is intolerant? If not intolerant, may be guilty of criminal behavior against one of our employees. Morally speaking, what is this board's standing on the abuse of women? If a male county employee had been grabbed and felt the teeth of an appointee pressed to the flesh of his hand, would we have rushed to remove the assaulter? If this board is this board going to have this employee come to work wondering and being wary of another incident from this person? Where is our zero tolerance on the first night of serving on that board or coming to that board? Practically speaking, is this board willing to be liable for this kind of behavior at a cost to our taxpayers? And is this board willing to hold up its reaction of how it's going to respond, or lack thereof, on this as a model for our young people to see? You know, this person was appointed by a vote of 4-1. I think the 4 positive votes have an obligation to do something. I certainly would like to see something done.
David, were you aware of this?
Yes. and
Accurate representation?
I have talked to, we confirmed all of the actions. And
I think we should immediately remove
well,
Mr.
and
Dancy.
I've talked to Mr. Danzy about this, and he did not want to resign. He wanted to continue on. He went and apologized to the person that this happened to. Told me it would not happen again. I really understand that's all the authority I had at that point in time. And that person accepted the apology. So anything else past that, I told him we would start a personnel record on it, and that we cannot tolerate anything like this in the future. And
well, this is not an employee.
That's up
this
to
is
you guys.
This is a person representing this board.
I
I
understand.
like Bob personally. I've known him for years and years, but that's just not acceptable. Period. Any circumstance.
I would say any board where we appoint people, they're acting as representatives of this county, whether they're paid or not. You know, there's still standards that they have to uphold. I understand. I didn't know about all this, but I understand, David, that you did. I would ask if it wasn't a board, if it was between staff members. I'm sure there's a procedure for investigating it through human resources.
That's what we did.
And that has been done.
Right. We investigated it. In fact, we got the attorney that was there. We got something from him as well.
It's been confirmed to be accurate.
Yeah.
So there's a formal conclusion of
yes,
wrongdoing.
Yes.
And
I'll make a motion to remove Mr. Dancy from the Code Enforcement Board then.
Hold on.
Second.
Hold on.
Let me check, because that's just coming out. Let me check if there's a notice requirement to him in the code, because there's a procedure. You do have the authority to remove somebody for cause.
And in addition, it would require a 5-0 vote since it's not an agenda item.
Right.
And this could come back to the board.
Yeah.
And I think that Mr. Edwards, not that I think, I'm convinced that Mr. Edwards is totally correct in his assessment. His authority is amongst his employees, where our authority stops at his gate. We can't mess with his employees. He is, so to speak, the boss of his employees. But board appointees, as witnessed by our votes, are our responsibility.
Agree.
Move on while Heather sees it.
Yeah, and we can move on.
I think she's ready.
And I think that rather than,
She's ready to give us an answer.
Yeah, I mean, the section 8.063 of the code provides that any member of the code board may be removed for cause after hearing, including for failure to attend 2 or 3 successive meetings without cause and without prior approval of the chairperson. So there is no technical notice requirement that we provide Mr. Danzy with notice that this action is going to be taken up. Obviously, if that's, I don't believe we have another code board meeting before. Is there another code board meeting before? So the next, we don't have another code board meeting. If you wanted to go the extra step and provide him notice and do an agenda item on this and bring it back on the February 17th meeting, you could still accomplish that before the next code board meeting.
I'd rather get it over
if you
with
want
now.
to. Okay,
The longer we drag this on, the more drama it's gonna be.
that's
Let's,
fine.
We
can
have
do
to,
that tonight, too.
we have to address this, and I agree with you, you know, I've known Bob for a long time, but I can't condone what he did. It's been confirmed by the administrator that it did happen as it's been done, you know, and I have to put personal aside, and I think that we as a commission, we can't condone this, you know.
This is what zero means.
This is what zero tolerance means, and we have to put our, you know, personal aside, and we just have to address this as a serious matter, and I would go along with it, you know.
There you go. Further discussion.
So, did he second it, or?
You made
I
a
seconded
motion. Who seconded it?
no, I made the motion, didn't I?
You made the motion.
You made the motion.
And who did
I'll-
second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Further discussion.
I just wanted to find out something on, well, I guess my question is to Heather as parliamentarian. This requires a vote of all 5 commissioners. If it did not succeed, could it come back by one of the commissioners who voted?
It could come back with the approval of the chairman.
I'd prefer to
I
get
would-
it over with.
I prefer to get it over with now.
I would
just
approve
worrying
that, so
it's
don't
not.
worry about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm good with that.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any more discussion items?
No, my
Want to go
motion.
ahead and do the public hearing at 6, and we can
Yeah.
We can. So we will go back to planning and zoning, item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, let me just kick this off. This is an application for final plat, FP 1401 for Scenic Stream Phase 1. This is a quasi-judicial item. In accordance with Section 24.01 of the code, each commission member needs to disclose any ex parte communications, which includes communications received from interested parties, the representative lobbyists, or other third parties concerning this application. Commissioner Kessler?
So, other than way back when we were dealing with borrow pits and such, that was the only contact I had with anyone relating to this or the surrounding projects.
Okay, those are already of record, so I think you're good.
No.
None.
I have the same, previously but nothing on this.
I haven't recently, but I think way back previously, whenever we mentioned this the first time, I think I may have back then, but of nothing previously.
Nothing new,
recent,
okay.
Nothing new.
If there's anyone here who's going to provide any information on this application, please stand up to be sworn.
That's you, Ben.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Louis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, this is for final plat approval for Phase 1 of Scenic Stream. It's for the first 11 lots of this subdivision. The Planning Commission considered this item on January 12th and voted unanimously to recommend approval.
Motion to approve, final plat.
There's just one item I'd like to point out. There is an error in the expiration date on the letter of credit, and we'd just like to add a condition that the corrected date be provided
I'll change my motion to
before
add that
recording.
item. That
So
condition,
any
Randy?
time frame, or just it be
Before we
filed?
record this.
Okay.
It says 2014, it should say 2015. It's just a date typo, but we just need to get that corrected before we record the plat.
Okay. We have a first, did we get a second?
I do the second.
Second. As modified. Any citizens? Further discussion among commissioners?
Yes. So the attachment that deals with the bonding and the handwritten notes that we spoke about earlier this morning,
Yes.
could you direct Paige to place that on the,
On the screen?
yeah.
I was trying to find it.
You have the,
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
is it in the agenda package?
Is
That's
that
attachment 7.
7, yeah.
And it is the date, the expiration date, on page 2 of 4. The expiration date should read June 19th, 2015. And we did speak to the bank and got a corrected document. We just need to have that finalized before we...
It expired before it ever issued.
Yes. It should obviously have been 2015.
And so I had questions for you at the time of what confidence do we have that even though this is at 125% of the estimated cost of completing the not as yet completed infrastructure, what infrastructure is this actually bonding, and what infrastructure has already been completed?
Yes, we did get an as-built survey to show what had been completed and what is yet to be completed. From my understanding, it is basically the road work that needs to be done, including striping and signage, and of course, the actual paving of that.
Do you still require an engineer to provide a sign and seal letter with a construction estimate for completion?
Yes, we do. And that has been provided. There was an itemized list that's included, and that's also an attachment.
That goes to the clerk of the court, right? And he looks at it and sees if it's sufficient. And then he writes a letter saying this is sufficient to meet the county's bonding requirements, right?
Yes. I mean, and before that, Public Works does look at the actual as-built and sort of confirms the engineer's
But the ultimate person that says this meets the county bonding requirements is the clerk. Right? He says that there's a bond on file, or...
Yeah, he really doesn't have any say as to what the amount is, whether that's the correct amount, but yes, he does confirm that it is the proper instrument.
Okay, so I'm hearing that that our Public Works can look at this and say this is the proper instrument as our county attorney would look at it.
Public Works, I think, looked at it from the dollar amounts. Is this a sufficient amount to accomplish this work in the event it's not completed by the developer?
I used to say, is it in conformance with standard engineering practices?
I hear you. And
I used to have Cleve's job.
and I guess I wouldn't be so concerned if I didn't have a track record, or the county didn't have a track record in the past of things not being completed as said they were going to be completed by this developer. That's my heartburn over here. So am I hearing from, maybe I should ask, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, could I ask Brent to come up? And, normally I would have gotten together with you prior, but I'm sorry. So my question is, this 125% to do the road work, I assume there's no sidewalks going in, it's just the...
No sidewalks.
Just the roads and the swales?
That's correct. I reviewed the quantities provided by the engineer, and I did find them in conformance and the cost associated with them.
Reasonable?
Reasonable.
Yeah, and that's all I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And just for future reference, I had talked to staff about kind of revamping the way we do this, that you need to be at a certain completion level before you're even allowed to bond, to finish things, and they assured me they're going to maybe do a little working on that. Maybe I'll bring something back.
And that's the other thing. What is the rush? I mean, I don't know how long this project's been out there. Flowers certainly has been out there for a long time, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we've got to do it now or else we're going to cost the developer money, not just this developer, but any other developer. Commissioner Merritt, like you just mentioned, and for that reason, I will be voting against it, is that this shouldn't be a rush thing. There should be a real mitigating reason why the stuff's not done. They didn't, a DEP permit that was pulled on them for some weird reason, and now they have to go back, and no fault of their own. But as I see it, this person's driving the train, and there's no reason for this.
And not to belate the point, but a lot of times they're paying interest money on the loan they borrowed for infrastructure, and they want to get a model home started. But I'm just saying some parameters, maybe saying you're 80% done, and somebody's not going to do 80% of a project and then give up on the last 20%. I understand exactly what you're saying, though.
Okay.
I just want to point out, Mr. Chairman, currently the county's code does allow this.
Right.
To get a preliminary plat, you have 18 months to bring it to final plat, or that preliminary plat expires. And we do have provisions in there that allows a developer to come in for final plat and not have all the infrastructure completed and post a bond or a letter of credit to secure that. So we can certainly look at making changes to that and adding additional conditions to it, but as of right now, this application as it's going forward is in the proper position.
There have been ones, as you remember, that got final plat approval with nothing being done. They bonded the entire infrastructure.
Understood. And maybe I should back off a little on this because I just get aggravated because of past history. But I think that we as a board owe it to the people of this community to tighten up this. And
I agree.
I'll vote for this with the understanding that this board will really encourage staff to look at this for the future so that we don't have to be relying on bonds to fulfill the obligation. Okay?
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Now, we will go back to discussion items. Commissioner Kessler, did you finish your discussions?
I think so, unless you want me to find something. What's that?
You had fracking on your list, but you can
Fracking,
quit.
really
You can skip
important.
it if you want to.
No, I don't. I don't. I really, this is a board participation. It's a sing-along. It's a come-by-ya. So fracking. So as I mentioned, and actually one of the people coming into town, I think tomorrow, Steve, I forget his last name, he's a member of what he describes himself as a Tea Party person, very strong property rights. He is totally opposed to this fracking that's going on. New York State has banned fracking. There's really good reasons. And the only reason I'm bringing this back is I had a resolution up here about that we should consider a resolution supporting legislature on banning fracking in Florida. These companies are not required to tell us what they're even pumping into the ground. Once stuff gets put in our ground, you can make the assumption here in Florida it's going to get into our groundwater. And that's almost an automatic for the vast portion of Florida. And we've seen real problems of harm to water systems where entire communities have had to have water, bottled water, brought into them because their water supply, who was there for generations, centuries, is destroyed. What do you do? Why I put this back on this thing is to try to maybe understand why the board did not even want to second and discuss this issue of fracking. You know, I think it's just very, very important. So that's why it's there, to allow some expression of why you may think it's a really good thing to promote fracking. I don't know, but I think that the citizens would like to hear. And that's the only reason I brought it back.
Thank you, sir.
Nothing from me.
I've got one small thing, just a report back from the Gulf Consortium meeting. The Pot 3 money, which is the competitive pot, the Gulf Consortium has just hired a consultant to develop a state plan that will outline how the application process will unravel. The estimate from the consultant is it's going to take about 2 years to finish the development of that plan. So we're probably looking, there or beyond as far as making application. Pot 1, the direct money that's coming to us, I believe that litigation is still underway, so no real news on that yet. That's all I have.
I have that.
Thing I have, for one, I went down to Azalea Park and I've seen the work that's being done down there, and I'm optimistic that the end product's going to look really well. But one thing, when we have the signs there that lets people know this is what we're doing, this is what has paid for this and everything, and it kind of brought back to light that pretty soon we're going to have everyone's going to have to vote on the 1 cent sales tax. And I think it's imperative that we produce signs like this and put them everywhere to where citizens, as they're driving around in their cars, that they can know and see the result of how important that money is, because it has done a lot for a community. It does a lot for it on a regular basis, and the sign would speak volumes to let people know the dollar amount that provides for our parks, the dollar amount that it provides for our roads and various other projects. And just a matter of information, I think we would be money ahead to produce those signs.
Outstanding idea. I recall somebody else was suggesting that. Be me. No, that would be me.
Yes, Commissioner Harden, that is on our Katie's list of things to do, is to get those signs up
How
there.
much trouble would it be to also add like a section of the website so we can direct people there and say, you know, here's an accounting, here's a breakdown of what it
That's
is.
all. We're going to be developing an overall plan for a 1 cent, and that's part of it. And I just we've had a lot of irons in the fire here lately. I haven't jumped square on that one yet, but that's coming.
Okay.
I believe, David, you're going to be at the fire station at Spring Creek on Tuesday.
Thank you.
David's going to be at the fire station on Spring Creek Tuesday evening at
Shell Point.
Shell Point.
Please excuse me. At Shell Point, Tuesday evening at what time?
At 6 o'clock.
And he will be discussing...
Next Tuesday.
Which Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
He will be discussing the things that are going on down
Right,
at
yes.
Shell Point.
For the Shell Point boat ramp.
Accordions, we call them.
Well, I'll be there. Commissioner Moore will be there, and we'll present the plan to the Shell Point folks and of where we're at, and they can take a look at it and give us some suggestions of what they'd like to see and all that stuff. So, but that project is progressing well. We're making good progress.
Motion adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
They're apparently going to take most of that field and